This is a response to a video by Tooltime9901, entitled Feminism the New Enemy. Forgive my use of a text-to-speech program. Due to a medical condition which may or may not be permanent, I am unable to physically speak. To Tooltime. I find two things interesting from the very beginning of your video. First, it is titled Feminism the New Enemy. I think this is funny because feminism is a very old enemy to men in general. It is only now that there is a feminist hijack of the atheist movement that atheists are pushing back and finding a truly powerful enemy. The second thing is that you compare the pushback against feminism as a Red Scare, a communism reference. I think it is funny considering the major influence communism had on the early feminists of the 1800s, and the hijacking of the environmentalist movement by both communists and feminists. Again, the history of feminism's relationship with communism is an interesting one. But that is a subject for a different day. Many atheists believe the feminist hijacking began with Rebecca Watson and Elevator Gate, which led to a skeptic crowd versus Richard Dawkins, which caused the divide in atheism. But that was just the moment the takeover became noticed. A bit like a disease that reproduces in your body, it might be there for a long time before you actually notice the symptoms. I could tell as far back as Lacey Green, many years ago, advocating the need for more women in the atheist movement, that atheism would become subject to a phenomenon now known as Mikerou's Law.
It then became clear that the most pressing issue was the phenomenon now codified as Mikerou's Law, which states, as any progressive movement grows and achieves success, the probability of it being co-opted by women who want to make it all about their vagina approaches 1. Remember the two-tiered justice system, income inequality, and the banking and mortgage crisis? Maybe you do, but they didn't. The most pressing problem at Occupy in Vancouver, according to articles published by Sasha Wiley-Shaw, is, not surprisingly, misogyny and slut-shaming. Seriously. One homeless guy at Occupy DC got into a snit because he had helped tarp over a bunch of tents, but was now going to be evicted because a group of women decided that this was going to be a women's space. And after he did his part, and thanks so much, his presence was no longer desired. I can only assume he was supposed to throw himself under a nice, warm bus. You probably already know that the more he complained about that injustice, the more he was a threat. That was just one example of what was a form of vaginal eminent domain.
I was aware of this law before it was codified, and interestingly enough it was truly cemented the first time I heard of this woman, Rebecca Watson. I was unaware that Rebecca was part of the atheist movement at the time. I first heard about Rebecca when I seen her on a live broadcast science show. It was called the Dr. Kiki Science Chat. I was a fan of this woman, Dr. Kiki, a neuroscientist that would broadcast via streaming media and talk about science, and often interview other scientists. I watched all of her streaming broadcasts, and enjoyed participating in the discussion. After Dr. Kiki had her baby, she would often do her broadcasts and not have a babysitter, and the audience would be forced to listen to her baby act up and get fussy. There are times he would get so fussy and scream so loud that Dr. Kiki would end the show. Even with her baby boy screaming and throwing a fuss, his head about 2 feet from the microphone, I was still willing to watch her show and participate. The day she interviewed Rebecca Watson, I quit watching after only 15 or 20 minutes. Watson's non-stop talk about the importance of women in science, women in skepticism, women in this, women in that, women, was driving me out of my mind. All I could think is this a science chat or a women's study group?
Sure. Well, I started skeptic.org, which is a site that's all about science and skepticism and feminism and snarkiness. And
we like the snarkiness.
Yeah, it helps the science go down. So yeah, and I'm not alone there. I have about a dozen fantastic writers, all of whom are women, except for we have one token man, because otherwise it would have looked sexist, you know.
Right. What, only women on Skeptic?
Yeah, you know, we got some criticisms, so we thought we'd add my friend Sam, who's fantastic. I oversee all of that. And then I'm on a podcast, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe,
Yes.
which I do with all men for a bit of a change.
Mm-hmm. There seem to be more. Does it seem that there are more male skeptics than female skeptics, or do you think they're just more men doing skeptic podcasts and blogs and that are out there in the public?
Well, I think it's a bit of both in a weird way. You know, I think most of the prominent skeptics, so to speak, are men.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a self-propagating thing. You know, you've got men at the top of the pile, I suppose, and they're the ones who are holding the conferences. And when they need to get people to attend the conferences, they want to get the big names that people are going to buy the tickets for, and those are men. So they, you know, it's just sort of, it's a cycle that just keeps going. But I think we're changing the cycle, and we're getting more women on stage. We're helping more women get on stage at smaller local events to build up their names, encouraging more women to attend these conferences and to start their own blogs and their own podcasts, trying to support that sort of thing amongst women. And what we're seeing is more women on stage, more women in the audience, more women contributing, not just in terms of their own blogs, but in, for instance, comments. The skeptic community of commenters is a fantastic group of women and men, obviously, but a really high percentage of women, and it always makes me feel really good when I see us reaching out beyond the people who already consider themselves skeptics, because those do seem to be very male, very white male focused.
I got fed up with her feminist horseshit, and for the first time ever, I closed my browser and skipped watching an episode of Dr. Kiki's show. That's right, I would rather spend an hour listening to a fussy newborn scream into a microphone while I had a headache than to listen to Rebecca Watson run her mouth for 15 minutes. I told myself that Rebecca Watson and others like her are like a cancer to science. A few months later came Elevator Gate, and that's when I realized Rebecca Watson and others like her are a cancer to every damn thing they become a part of.
Steadily emerging for quite some time now online, identifies externally feminism as the enemy, and within the ranks of YouTube atheists, feminism is being viewed by many people as an internal enemy in a kind of Red Scare scenario where feminist infiltrators must be rooted out before they corrupt and poison atheism.
I believe feminist infiltrators must be weeded out of not only the atheist movement, but every other political, social, and cultural movement they have infiltrated and poisoned. Feminists have hijacked and piggybacked every movement that begins to gain grounds. Even things which are not movements in any political sense have been infiltrated and hijacked by feminists. The video game industry.
Welcome to our multi-part video series exploring the roles and representations of women in video games. Crystal is given a skimpier, more sexualized outfit. And yes, that is cheesy saxophone music playing to make sure it's crystal clear that she is now an object of desire, even while in suspended animation.
Comic-Con.
As a kid, American comics put me off for a long time. I watched anime and read manga, but I wouldn't touch most American comics about women. The way they were posed, the way they were dressed, the overabundance of breasts and ass, it all served to make me avert my eyes and slouch away to a different section of the bookstore. Sexism in comics may seem like an inconsequential topic, something to handwave about. Because of course comics are sexist, right? They're basically just skin mags for nerds is what you're thinking.
DEF CON. In fact, you should watch this entire video by politically incorrect comedian Ramspaul, called Creeper Cards, all about the feminist assault on DEF CON. I also think his video is hilariously entertaining.
So I guess every year in Las Vegas there's a DEF CON conference. That's where the hackers of the world get together and talk about their geeky hacking. And feminists hate these conferences because they say they're almost all male, and that pisses them off. Well, and this is a theme not just with hackers, but all of technology and science, like engineers. Feminists now complain that there's too many men. It's the only space left where there's men in it, and they're saying there's too many. But one of these girls that attended this DEF CON conference, instead of coming up with a great new hacking algorithm, she came up with color-coded cards. She advocates that all females that should attend any technical conference should carry a red, yellow, and green card. And what happens if a man should come up and talk to you? After he talks to you, you give him a card. And if he should say something that's like somewhat inappropriate, like, hey, you have nice tits, You give them a yellow card that says, you've been warned that what you said is inappropriate and this won't be tolerated. I'll link to it on my website so you can see the cards you can buy. I like that girl's idea, and I think guys should be able to do that. We should make our own creeper cards, or I call them a feminist card that we can give women. So this is my idea. What do you guys think? Would you buy something like this?
When feminists infiltrate a movement, they use the same strategy, because it works, and that strategy looks something like this. 1. Claim there is a need for more women. 2. Claim that the women who are in the movement are being sexually harassed, claiming it's an epidemic, and demand zero-tolerance policies and protection. Give lectures on the need to make the women safe. 3. Wait until some men with a spine stand up to their BS, and then they can claim they are being attacked for being female and voicing their opinion, and how this is a perfect example of oppression, patriarchy, rape culture, etc. This will lead to nearly all the normal women siding with the feminists, and thus becoming active feminists, which is one of the reasons feminists hijack movements. It's a recruiting method, and because at least half the males of the movement will instinctively start white knighting to save the women folk, the few men who understand this is a bullshit feminist scam will be chased out of the movement.
People start to fight amongst themselves, and then eventually the pack starts to form. And you can perceive the pack forming when people fall in line to a certain point of view. And for example, one thing that caught on was, of course, this idea that I believe in equality for women, but I don't believe in feminism, or I wouldn't call myself a feminist. You see people making these statements in which they try and distance themselves from who the group is out to get.
Oh, I love how you are painting the men's rights activists like a rabid lynch mob out to hang and burn the witches or the commies. Yeah, no bias there. As for the men's rights movement being a bunch of bullies with their harassment and bullying campaigns, you are either lying or misinterpreting things. As for spamming every video they can find that is feminist or anti-men's rights on YouTube, that thing you call spamming is actually called voicing an opinion. And as far as them seeking out such videos, this is a common habit to all niches such as religious fundamentalists, atheists, vegans, feminists, racists, anti-racists, and so on and so forth. Go to a YouTube search looking for religion, and every YouTube video featuring a person preaching God, who does not have comments blocked, will have their channel filled with atheists mocking them. Does this mean that atheists are launching a bully, harassment, and spamming campaign? No, it means they are seeking out an opposing viewpoint, and then arguing that person. Those who stand against feminism are not behaving any different than atheists or any other group of social political activists on YouTube.
Now, to be clear here, I don't have any problem with questioning feminism or being skeptical of feminism or any other point of view or belief. I do not believe there is such a thing as an unassailable point of view, that there's one ideology that gets it right. There are no infallible books. There are no infallible philosophies. I totally advocate skepticism.
Well, this is the first segment of your video I actually agree with. Too bad it was meant to lead into this next bit of bullshit.
But what I don't see here is anything resembling an informed discussion on the subject. Things are reduced to groupthink, to cliches, to stereotypes.
You claim you don't see anything resembling an informed discussion. I find that to be an interesting statement. Commenters have a 500-character limit. There will never be an informed discussion within those constraints. And considering you read all those comments with those silly mocking voices, you're not going to see any reasonable discussion. Your cognitive bias on this would immediately make even a brilliant argument sound retarded, because this is how you choose to view those who are not agreeing with you.
Atheism plus is bullshit. Feminism is bullshit. Let's get back to the point, ladies and gentlemen. Feminism criminalizes males of the human species no matter how you look at it.
Feminism is ugly women wondering out loud why men don't like them.
Rebecca Watson only cares about her own shameful agenda. I support Philip Mason.